So Graham Platner is the progressive Senate candidate in the Democratic primary in Maine, and we're having quite an interesting race over there between Susan Collins, who has actually, as far as I can tell, not announced that she's going to run for a sixth term, versus Janet Mills, the governor, who a lot of people are objecting to, one because of her centrism and also her age. If she were elected, she'd be I believe, the one of the oldest first-term senators ever. She's in her 70s, so a lot of people just aren't excited for her for that reason alone. But with Platner, he was someone who espoused many of the same, positions I like to bring up and mention, progressive. But he's got himself into a bit of a controversy over two separate things. One are some old posts on Reddit, which I'm not as upset by, because I do believe that people can change. And the stuff he was writing, I don't think most of it was really that, it's whatever. But the other big thing that people are going after him for is a skull and bones tattoo, which is said to resemble the Totenkampf. How you pronounce it? It's imagery that is associated with a certain group that used to rule Germany. Now, he's claimed that he didn't know, that this was the symbolization of this tattoo. Some associate of his has said that he knew as far back as 10 years ago that that was what the thing was. There are progressives, like Emma Vigeland, Crystal Ball, Cenk Uygur, just different, people in this sphere who are defending him, and their rationale is like, oh, well, we can't be so picky about the people that we want to represent us. And I guess I'm sort of a different position, which is that it's really hard for me to believe that in the whole state of Maine, right, which, it's not the biggest state, but it's got a few 100,000 people. It's really hard to believe that in the whole state of Maine, we couldn't get anyone better than someone that has a damn tattoo of something associated with one of the worst groups in all of human history. And I don't think people are wrong for looking at that imagery and going, well, I don't, if you ever actually believed that, I don't really want to be associated with you. Like, I've been very clear about the fact that I believe tattoos are stupid. This is, I'm not here to get bogged down in a conversation about tattoos, but just imagine, like, of all the things you could get a tattoo of, right? All the different things in this world. It could be a character. I knew one guy who got his grandma's name on his arm. All the different imagery that you could choose to have put on your body, possibly for the rest of your life. You pick that. That is what you choose to have on you. And, I was thinking about how, again, these progressives are, like, really trying to make people that aren't enthused about supporting the guy with, that tattoo and the different posts that he has, like, seem like we're crazy. But honestly, I don't really see why we have to get involved. Just referring to the whole, like, realm of progressive commentators, because as far as I can tell, none of these people live in Maine, and we have plenty of House and Senate races that we don't even ever discuss or talk about at all. So it just seems like they're going out of their way to carry water for a guy that, if he implodes, it's not going to be because a few people on the internet were talking about how weird it was that he had this, offensive tattoo. But it's, in a way, it's kind of reminding me a little bit of the Roy Moore situation right over there in Alabama, where all the Republicans liked what he was saying, but once he got those allegations, then suddenly there was a reluctance to really associate with him. And here, obviously no one's alleging anything of that nature with Platner, and these are, this is proven stuff, him having this tattoo and the different posts that he's made. But it's a pretty similar deal where people who otherwise would have been, waving the Platner campaign's, ribbons online are kind of like, okay, is that really the best we can do? A guy with that kind of past and that sort of imagery on him, is that who we're going to root for and support? And the problem is, again, that I know if it were a conservative Democrat or just a Republican, and they had that kind of tattoo on them, skull and bones, and looking like something out of us from a certain German group, you know, the progressives would waste no time condemning that person, going, "What the hell is wrong with that?" Imagine if Susan Collins had a tattoo of that thing. Nobody would defend. Certainly not on this side. In fact, we would actually be calling the Republicans fascist, and all the other terms they use to describe them if they came out in defense of her, were she to have a tattoo like that. But when one of our guys, one of the people that we agree with, has that kind of imagery, it's okay. So like I said, I'm gonna stay out of that race. Um, I have no excitement for Mills. Collins is not someone I've really ever had that big of an issue with. I know she's had some votes that have pissed people off, Democrats anyway, but that's kind of the what happens when you're, a moderate, like an actual moderate. You sometimes you piss off people for not being left wing enough or right wing enough. You basically just can't please anybody. So her getting reelected is really not anything I'm too upset over. I will say that I wish that I could ignore Platner having that weird tattoo, that very inappropriate tattoo, and join the rest of the progressives and going, "Oh, get over his past." But it's like, it's really hard for me to believe that that's as good as we can get. We just have to accept people with derogatory imagery on them, because they happen to favor single payer, or uh, you know condemn Israel for their practices in Gaza. Like, at a certain point, it's just, when is enough enough? And it'd be one thing if, like, for example, Platner was just some guy on Twitter, running his mouth on social media, and people were coming after him. That's whatever. But for this man to be elevated to one of the most powerful people in America, were he to win that Senate seat, and we're going to help him, and he's got that kind of stuff on him, I'm good. I'm good. So whether he wins or loses, it will not. And I'm very open to financially supporting different candidates I like. I've given money to Sanders and Ro Khanna and Ilhan Omar, but there's a certain line that I draw when it comes to some of these people, and this is not someone I'm going to support, either by financially backing them with a few dollars or even covering them. Like, the only way I'll cover Platner again is if he gets into some really big, thing, like, for example, everybody's talking about it, it's impossible to ignore it, or if he wins the election and becomes a senator, and we have to then cover him from here and now. But besides that, I don't intend to ever talk about the man again. I think this is such a good example of what I kind of have a problem with, which is that we're torn between people who claim to have standards, and then people who don't want any type of standards, or they want to have them specifically. And because I know that if these types of scandals befell Republicans, right, having the tattoo, the offensive messages, that you would see the progressives condemning them, I can't sit here and go, "Oh, well, it's okay. We'll take anybody with a weird tattoo." God. And that just, I didn't want to, like, say any names or play any clips, but when you watch their stuff, you can really see the righteousness they feel. Like, they really think they're winning an argument here. Like, yeah, we're gonna defend this guy with this offensive tattoo, and if you have an issue with it, well, that's too damn bad. You're picky. It's like, yeah, I guess. Because remember, if someone that has an offensive tattoo supports the same positions as you, you have to back them for Congress. You have no choice. And if you don't, then you're giving into the oligarchy. You either fight the oligarchy, or you back every candidate that claims to be opposed to it, while having imagery that is indicative of their hatred for another group of people.